came to me about, I don't know, about a month or so ago, had this idea. Maybe she was on one of our national webinars and saw this product, brand new itinerary for us. And she said, I want to put a wine cruise together, a group from my clients. And we discussed it. We came up with dates and so on. And she's got a fantastic offer. So we're going to go through this tonight. That's me. Again, I'm up in Massachusetts, but I am the regional sales manager with Alma Waterways. I'm up in Massachusetts and I cover all of New England. When we talk about river cruising, we always start with a quote from one of our founders that says, oceans take you to countries and rivers take you through them. So for anybody that's not been on a river cruise, maybe been on an ocean cruise, completely different, completely separate types of vacations. A river cruise really takes you into the country. It's cultural immersion. You stop every day right in the ports, right in the towns, the cities, and you get out and you spend the day, you spend the evening, you spend the time in town. And it's a much different experience than an ocean cruise. Again,
we might want to mute, except for while we're doing the wine tastings. If you guys can mute yourself, that will make it easier. Then when we do the tastings, we can turn them back on so we can talk.
Right.
Thank you.
This is, and my co-host here, Lorraine, has been on other river cruises. And this was what river you on here, Lorraine?
I did the lower Danube and the upper Danube.
Okay.
Oh, and I was in Budapest there. Chain bridge.
That's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah. One of my favorite cities, beautiful city.
So here's our first opportunity to raise our glasses tonight. So you want to get Irene, our wine host, involved here for, I think the Chardonnay was first, everybody.
Okay. So I don't know how many of you stopped in the store to pick up the
Can't hear well.
She's got to
Can't
speak.
hear well?
She's got to speak
I
directly.
need to get right on top of here.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Is that better? Okay.
Better.
Don't want to shout at you. Yeah, so if you got a chance to pick up something, Chardonnay from Macon, it's one of the AOC's really important Chardonnay producing areas in Burgundy. So when people talk about Burgundy, they usually think of basically Burgundy, which is a Pinot Noir grape. Most of it very expensive, very good stuff. But I wanted to have 3 different types of wines tonight. So that's why we went with a Chardonnay from Macon instead. The producer, we don't know who the producers are for the wines that I had recommended because it's a very small importer. Every year during harvest season, he goes out to Bordeaux, goes out to pretty much all of France to visit all the tiny little vineyards. So if you had picked up one of our bottles, there's only, I believe, let me see, 1,250 cases only a year. So it's very small production, very, very well done. They're more than organic. They don't say they're organic, but they are actually very sustainable. And once they're gone for the season, that's it. Next year, he may end up going to a different place. But what I like about this Chardonnay is it's 100% Chardonnay. And it's about a good percentage of it, excuse me, 80-some% of it is aged in stainless steel tanks. And then 13% is aged in 2 to 5 years of oak cask. And what they do is they actually blend those two together. So what happens is if you just get a straight Chardonnay that is only in stainless steel cans, you're going to taste a lot, much brighter fruit. You won't have the buttery kind of creamy notes that this one has. They've done a really nice job of blending this wine. And also another term you might hear when they talk about, which you probably will hear when you go on this cruise, is batonnage or batonnage. It's basically a lee steering. So when they, I get really excited when I talk about wine too. when they ferment the wines, all the dead yeast cells, they kind of leave some of it in to continue to ferment and age, because what that does is, think of it like a potato soup, right? It's like a creamy suspension in there. So same thing with the dead yeast cells. When they leave it in there to age, you get that creamy mouthfeel in the Chardonnay, which you wouldn't get, say, like in Sauvignon Blanc or something like that. most tasty notes for Chardonnay, especially this one, it's got really, I can like smell the vanilla and the creaminess. It's weird to say you can smell the creaminess, but I can smell the creaminess. Lots of tropical fruit. Sometimes people get apple, they got some citrus, but really delightful. This one is a Chardonnay that has really good balanced acidity from start to finish. It just, it just makes your mouth water all the way around. If you guys had a taste of it yet, if you haven't, you should.
Yes, it's good.
Thank you. So not just any Chardonnay, but one that is from very small production, which I'm sure when you go on your cruise, if you do sign up for this cruise, you'll find that some of the wines that you have there are just amazing that you will never find over here, which is what I love about this producer, this importer, is that he goes and sources all these really incredible wines from, they're just too small to ship the stuff, export it out of the country.
Right.
The same problem when I was in Bordeaux. We stopped a bunch of vineyards that were really great, but they were just too small. The only way I could bring the wine back was packed in my suitcase. And I'm trying to find importers for them. Yeah, which I did. I'm like, I'm gonna get you somebody to import your wine. So definitely, go with that in mind if you do go and try, if you get some really good names, let me know and I'll try and talk to this importer and maybe he can, bring some of the wines back. So questions on this, or should I just let you guys continue? Oh.
Good job, Irene.
Okay.
Thanks, good, huh? And those of you who don't have this particular Chardonnay,
Come see me tomorrow.
well, they don't live around here.
It's okay. My customers come from all over
Fly
the
up
US.
from Miami. Yeah.
So can
right.
you have a bottle? Do you have a bottle of what?
Yes. Let me,
it
yeah,
looks like?
it was a little bit wet. So
Macon Verge.
Yeah,
Is it-
I forget that one.
Can you tell me what how this rates to that? Because this is what the proprietor at the wine store gave to me.
okay. Hard to see. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Also, that was my second choice. It's Puy Fusé, which is equally is even better actually.
Yeah.
That's
And
even
And it
more
was a lot
expensive.
cheaper.
It's a good
What's
one.
that?
It was a lot cheaper.
Yeah. Okay. So there's Puy Fusé by different, obviously different producers. So you can
Yeah.
get Puy Fusé for $20. You can get it for a couple of $100. But do you like
Yes,
it? Do you
it's
enjoy it?
very nice, actually. Yep.
That's good.
Good.
And I'm not a white wine fan, but this is actually really tasty.
Mhm. I mean, it reminds me like summertime though, more than fall.
Yes, definitely. With some lobster.
Okay, I'm going to resume the presentation and then we'll have another pause in a few slides and taste the next wine. So just to talk about the cruise again, AMA is a family-owned company, and these three people are the owners of AMA Waterways. They're my bosses. The gentleman on the right with the glasses he's considered the godfather of river cruising in Europe. It's Rudy Schreiner. He started a company back in the 80s called Uniworld Luxury River Cruises. And then in the middle 90s, in 1995 to be precise, when the company Viking River Cruises started, they recruited Rudy Schreiner to start their company and design. He's a nautical engineer by trade. He designs all the ships. He designs all the itineraries. He grew Viking into what it is. And then in 2003, he got together with the other two folks here, Gary and Christine, and they started AMA Waterways. He started his own river cruise company in 2003. And I don't know how many of you have been on a river cruise before, but again, very different from an ocean cruise, so we won't reference ocean cruising. A river cruise is, the concept is just that the ship becomes your floating 5-star hotel, right? It's a luxury floating hotel. You got 2 5-star restaurants on board. All of your meals are included in the pricing. With AMA, all of your beer and wine are included in the pricing. All of your excursions are included in the pricing, and there's all different types of excursions you can choose from each day. And again, we dock right in the middle of the towns, right in the cities. Most of the tours are walking or perhaps hiking tours, and we do carry bicycles on the ship. So we have touring bicycles on the ships. You can take the bicycles out for a guided ride or a ride on your own. And it's very laid back. The dress is casual. Even on the captain's dinner, laid back. You don't have to get all dressed up. It's very laid back. And if you've not sailed on a river cruise before for AMA Waterways, this is what the typical stateroom looks like. About 80%, 85% of our staterooms would be these twin balcony staterooms.
Oh,
Good
mine
size.
mine didn't turn for some reason to the next slide.
No? What are you on?
No. Did anyone else?
It turned, but then it turned again.
I see cheese now.
Yeah.
Cheese
Right,
and
cheese and wine and grapes.
Oh, there we go. I'm at the stateroom now.
Okay. Well,
All
we're
right,
ahead
well,
of you
now
then.
we know that.
Okay.
So can you
Everybody's
go back to
bed.
the stateroom for 1 second?
Sure.
Do you mind?
No.
Because I do want to say that one of the things that I love about AMA is their staterooms and their decor in general is so warm and welcoming. I always feel like, especially after I went on a couple of them, when I went back into the ship, I was like, I went home, you know? And I really love that. A lot of the other cruise lines use a lot of Scandinavian design furniture, so it's a lot more bare feeling, more minimal. But here it feels kind of plush, and then it's not as extravagant as some of the luxury lines are.
No,
You know,
it's-
I crossed one and there were mirrors everywhere, and I thought, I don't want to look at myself this many times on
Well,
my
you
vacation.
raise a good point there, Lorraine. We're considered a luxury product, but we don't put a lot of ornate materials on the ship because it
Yeah.
tends to weigh them down. So some of our competitors use a lot of glass and mahogany and Italian marble, and they're all beautiful. But a couple of years ago, they had low waters on the rivers. On the Rhine River had low waters, and what happens is if there's not enough water in the river and your draft is 4.5, 5 feet, you're not sailing anywhere. Well, our ships are actually specially designed so they can sail in 3 feet of water. And 2 years ago, we were sailing in 3.5 feet of water. And I think we were the only river cruise company that completed all but 2 of our sailings that particular season, 2018, when most people were busing people or coaching people or canceling their itineraries. We were still sailing. So that was kind of neat. But that's a good point that you bring up. Thank you for bringing that up. So now let's look at, I just got some, here's a pretty slide on some of the local cuisine. The itinerary that we're looking at tonight, which the name of the itinerary is just called The Essence of Burgundy and Provence, means basically you're sailing on 2 rivers that meet up in Lyon. You're on the Saône River in northern France, and then you meet up at Lyon. It turns into the Rhone River in southern France. And the neat thing about this itinerary is that you have 2 different wine regions and you have 2 different cuisines. The cuisine in the north is distinctly based on dairy. So you have some of the best butter in all of France, and France has the best butter in the world. And you have these wonderful breads, and you have these wonderful cheeses, and you have all these rich, thick and rich, creamy sauces that come with your entrees and things like that. And then you have wines. You have the Burgundy wines. You have the Chardonnays. You have different wines. And I'll leave that to Irene to explain the wines. But then when you get to the south, when you get onto the Rhone River, now this is a part of France was part of the Roman Empire. So you have a much more Mediterranean cuisine. What once was butter up north is now replaced by olive oil. Okay, so a lot of olive oil, a lot of Mediterranean cuisine. You can tell the difference, and also the wines change as well. Okay, so this is the juxtaposition of the cuisines and the wines and the regions, from a distinctly French-looking region to a distinctly Romanesque-looking region, is the kind of the beauty of this itinerary as we move forward. On the ship, all of the food is fresh. Everything that we serve nothing's ever frozen. Everything's sourced locally. You can see the local merchants bringing the produce on the ship every day, bringing fresh fruits and vegetables and meats and things like that, and fish. And it's very exciting to see. So we'll have 2 menus every day. We'll have a French menu that changes daily depending on where we are in the region, and the chef decides what he's making that afternoon, that evening. And then there's a static menu that is a North American menu for people that maybe want a little more comfort food, steak and potato. At lunch, you can actually get a cheeseburger. So you can mix and match. It's very laid back. No one's judging you. I personally don't know why you would go to France and eat anything from this country personally, but some people do. I travel with my wife, and sometimes she needs a cheeseburger and a basket of fries, and that's fine, right? So so you understand, every meal is, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You can get local French food, or you can get bacon and eggs. At lunchtime, you can get whatever the local soups are, whatever the local dishes are, or you get a cheeseburger, so on and so forth, just so you understand.
One quick thing I wanted to say, a really fun thing that I'll never forget. I was on the ship in port, and they got their linen delivered. It was the coolest thing I ever saw. Of all these pictures, they made a whole line of people from the dock all the way up the gangway up into,
Fireman's
and
carry.
they tossed the linens from one person to another all the way up and then put it in the cart. And they had this thing. It was the
Right.
best. I've never
Yeah.
thought about it like that.
We would call that the fireman's carry, like with the bucket
Yeah.
brigade, because the ship is narrow. There's not enough room for people to be passing each other in the corridors. So the entire crew, which is about 45 people, lines up. And the same thing happens, by the way, when they bring cases of wine or kegs of beer or fish, when the fishmonger comes or what have. It's the fireman's carry, and it's the neatest thing. If you see, sometimes we're in town already doing our excursions, but other times you can see when all the local stuff's coming on board. It's kind of exciting, and you go, boy, I can't wait to get back for lunch now because I see all this food they're bringing on the ship. So it is, I mean, it's true 5-star cuisine, and there are also other opportunities to eat on the excursions, when we're in town. So you can anticipate we'll feed you 3 meals on the ship, and we'll feed you maybe a couple other times in town. So, do some hiking and some biking, because we're gonna eat a lot and we're gonna drink a lot of wine. So, and then here you show what I have here on this slide is what we call our sip and sail, which is we open the bar entirely every night before dinner. So we serve beer and wine with meals. Okay, that's part of what's included. But we will open the bar before dinner and the guest lounge, because we want everyone to come together and meet each other and guests to talk to each other. And we also want the cruise director to address everybody. What's the agenda for that evening? What's the entertainment on the ship? What can you do off the ship that evening? And what are the excursions the next day? So this is called the sip and sail. We have about 30 signature cocktails at the bar, and then we have spirits and things like that. So that's a great way for everybody to sort of loosen up and meet other guests on the ship before dinner. And then excursions. Excursions are really why you're here. The ship is beautiful. The cuisine is great, but you're here to take in these little medieval towns along the Saône and along the Rhone rivers. I mean, and some of these towns, the cathedrals that you'll visit, or the monasteries, or the fortresses, are from the 12th and 13th century. Okay, you're going to see stuff that 700-800 years old, and the populations of these towns, for the most part, with the exception of Lyon, a couple thousand people, right? So the way that you do it is important. We tend to break our excursions into small groups of people, 12, 15 at a time, with a local guide. Most of them are walking tours, but we also offer a hike each day. And again, we offer a bike ride each day, and you can mix and match from day to day. And we end our excursions usually with a local tasting, whether it's a wine tasting, a cheese tasting, and to the photo to the left there's some type of cooking class that ends in a tasting. So there's all kinds of opportunities, and these tastings are exclusive. We'll bring a small group of people into a bakery or into a vineyard or something like that. You'll go to a wine cellar. You'll meet the owners of the vineyard, and you'll do a wine tasting. So it's a very again immersive experience. You're meeting locals, and you're tasting the local things. This is how, after years of going back and forth to Europe, this is how I personally remember all these little towns, by what did I eat there? What did I drink there? Who did I meet there? And then there's plenty of free time to walk around on your own and poke around and do shopping and do more tasting and things like that. You cannot get lost. The rivers, especially in France, the river's not very large. You can only park the ships in one area. So if you know which way the river is, you can't get lost. So we will tell you how much time you have at each excursion to stay in town. We encourage you to do so.
And one thing I love about AMA Waterways is you can go on as many excursions as you can fit in. And they have multiple, because again, a lot of other river cruise lines give you one a day, and it's usually a small city tour. But AMA Waterways are always creative, adventurous. They have the, you can go bike riding with them. You can do all kinds of things. And they're included. So I learned on my first one, I exhausted myself. I signed up for every single thing. On the second one, I said, don't be out of your mind. And I relaxed a little bit more, but it's tempting to just sign up for everything.
Right. So here's the virtual trip. We'll take you down this virtual trip quickly. The itinerary is not until 2022. We feel that everybody's comfort level is, late next year into 2022. Soon we'll be selling itineraries for 2023. So we, as a company, we've pretty much filled up our calendar for July or August on next year. Everything's filling up nicely. And for 2022, we've sold over 50% of our inventory. So we know people want to go. It's just a matter of everyone's comfort level. When will people feel comfortable, right? So I think what Lorraine has done here is smart in taking the long view and say, this is 2 years from now. Let's put something nice on our calendars. Let's have something to look forward to. And, listen, if we're not through this in 2 years, I'll be working at Walmart or something. So it doesn't really matter, right? So,
You and I together, Stephen.
Exactly.
We'll both be.
I'll be an
Can I,
Amazon.
can I ask what the weather is in November?
Yes. Who asked the question?
Me,
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Okay, Rebecca. So that's a good question. So in the south of France, it's much milder than it is here in New England. So you'd have similar to the weather, maybe not as well. We've had a pretty mild fall so far here. It won't be in the 70s. I would say be in the 50s most days. And if you can look,
50s?
yeah, in the 50s, yeah. Wouldn't start off in the 50s, but warm up to the 50s most days in the early part of November. And if you can see behind me, to my right, what the river valleys look like, they turn gold. It's sort of like our foliage, right? So November is like their foliage, right? So the vineyards turn sort of a brown, yellow, and gold, right? So you get all these rich colors, and it's very pretty. So this is the typical time that we would take our wine cruises, either in the late spring or the late fall. That's typically when they take our wine cruises. And the weather is very mild. Yeah.
Yeah, harvest time.
Yep, exactly. So let's take a look. So I know my map is not to scale, but just to give people a rough idea of where we are. We sell these cruises. Everybody sells river cruises in 7-night increments. So it's a 7-night cruise. You will have the ability with your travel advisor, Lorraine, to talk about whether if you wanted a longer vacation than 7 nights, there's a 3-night stay in Geneva on the front end, or a 3-night stay on the back end, Barcelona in northern Spain. If I had my druthers, I would vote for Barcelona. But that's totally between you and Lorraine. And when we do pre and post on land, we're still with you. We still host you. The cruise director actually meets everyone at the hotels. We come get everyone from the airport, we bring them to the hotel, or we bring them to the ship. And you're with about 2/3 of our guests would do the pre or the post with us and then do the cruise. So that's an option. But you can see, if you can see some of the stops here, there's 2 rivers. We start in the north. We start in the Saône starts up there, Dijon, where they make the mustard, where all the mustard comes from. And you can see we get on the ship in Chalon-sur-Saône, and you can see all these little black dots. These are the little towns that you're going to be visiting And you see Macon, where Irene has already had some nice Chardonnay from Macon. There's a wine tasting in Macon. And you see all these lovely little towns. The only city that we're in here is Lyon. Lyon is a sizable city. The rest of these are these beautiful, just medieval, lovely towns with great cuisine and great wines. So let's take a look. This is our next wine tasting opportunity. This is a wine region map that we use for our wine cruises. And this sort of gave Irene like the outline of the types of wines, the types of grapes that are grown in this region that you'll be tasting on this particular itinerary. So I'll hand it over to you, Irene.
Hi. So when I think of anything just south of Lyon, first thing that comes to mind obviously is Avignon. Chateau Cormitin was probably one of my favorite French wines because I'm definitely a red wine girl. And that's actually, I should have recommended maybe Côte d'Or for for something that was inexpensive. But basically, it's like a GSM blend. What that means is Grenache, Syrah. Those are the two main grapes that grow in the region. They're thicker skinned, so they are able to grow in a warmer area without having the grape skin split. And M is for the Mourvèdre, which is a wine that sort of gives the Grenache and the Syrah a little bit more structure. When it's done well in the blend, I don't know what you guys, how many of you picked up the one that is available in my store, but it is an amazing nose. Like I could just bury my nose in this and just no. So this is the Chateau Cormitin. So yeah, this is your red. If you didn't already open your red, you should have already. Oh, yes, that's yours. Yep. Anyway, so this has some, we talk about Roman, history and stuff, and this Chateau Cormitin is actually commonly known as the wine of the Pope, because that's what's it? Yes, it's the Pope, exactly. So, but Pope or no Pope, religion's outside of the discussion. This is probably it's when you think of French wine. I mean, there's Burgundy and all that, but to me, when you're in this region, this is the one wine that I always gravitate to. In fact, even when I was on the Bordeaux cruise in Paris, we actually sat down for dinner by the river, and they offered us a Chateau Cormitin. There were a couple of different ones. One that I recognized from over here, and it was like what I paid for it there was what I would pay for costs here. So definitely when you're there, drink a lot of it, as much as you can. When we're talking about how good the food was, and just on the boat alone, it's just how it got me to drink a lot more rosé. I was never a huge rosé fan until I went on that cruise. So for breakfast for me every day was 3 eggs, a half a pound of bacon, and 3 glasses of champagne. And then whatever, whatever salmon they had. Lunch was always, really good salmon.
Yeah.
And then lunch was whatever they had for lunch. I remember one of the stops was like escargot. I'm like, okay, 3 glasses for rosé. I never got the name of the rosé they served them, but it was amazing. So I became a huge rosé fan. So now when I drink rosé, I put myself on a kind of a temporary vacation. Even on Sunday morning, I'm like, Sunday morning brunch, drink rosé. And then dinner was, I stopped counting out to 3 glasses of red wine, but definitely take advantage of it because they bring in all the local wines from the region. But going back to the CDP, what I love about it is there's a lot of black cherry and black currant. That's very, very characteristic of this wine. And I remember the picture you posted a couple of slides ago with the rack of lamb. This would be a perfect pairing for that, right? It has enough softness and sweetness in it, but yet has some tannins provided by the Mourvèdre. It becomes a very balanced wine and so easy. I mean, you don't even need food with it, but definitely with food is better. But I could sip this all day long.
All good points. All good points.
There's a lot going on, especially in a glass like this. Look at these really cool glasses. It really enhances the flavor. You're like, you just want to bury your nose in it and go, And 2016, I believe, was an excellent year. So if you're going on this trip and have any 2016 left, which they should, because these wines should last a while. So if you buy a case and buy a bottle first, excuse me. If you really like it, buy a case or 2 and put it away and open a bottle every 6 months, make sure it's still good. That way, for the next 10 years or so, you'll get some really nice wine that you can enjoy time and time again.
Good.
So could you show the bottle? Could you show the bottle for that again?
This is Santa Cosme, Santcosme.
I've had it.
Okay,
A
and
$60 bottle. I mean, there
could
are
I show you, could I show you the bottle that I got if you can tell me about that?
yes. Can you pull it a little higher up?
A little higher, a little higher.
A little higher.
Oh, yeah, I've drank that. That's good.
Ah, yes, that's a nice one also.
You're 2 for 2, Charmaine.
You've done
Yes,
good,
you did really good.
2 for 2. I've had that. I used to,
Again,
I
like
used
half
to
the
give that
price.
bottle, I used to give that type of wine away. If we were doing this in person, I'd be giving that bottle away as a door prize. That's one of the
Okay,
nights that I give
cool.
away.
I
That's a
think
very
I
nice
had a
bottle.
really good, I think I had a really good wine salesman where I went.
think
so.
Anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Anybody else have another red you want to ask about that you picked? Or did you all get the Chateau Neuf de Pape?
Anybody have a Coteron? Because Coteron's the same thing. It's it's also a GSM blend. It just doesn't make it quite to the quality of Chateau Neuf de Pape.
They're all busy drinking.
And if it's too much to pronounce in the tray, we just call it a CDP. So that means, maybe not so much in France, but US, ask for a CDP and people know.
Not to be confused with the CDC.
Yes. Totally different animal.
Yes, please don't mix those up.
Yeah.
Charmaine, can I ask you what wine store you went to? Because I think you're from the West Hartford area, right?
You're muted.
Tell me you're on mute.
Sorry, I went to Crazy Brews.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah,
That's
that's some
huge.
nice stuff there.
It is huge. Okay, I have to go over there.
I went to the first guy I could find and he was
Uh-huh.
busy doing the beer thing. And the next thing you know, I said one thing that had to do with this, with the French. He took me right to the area
Uh-huh.
and I showed him the lineup. Thank you, Lorraine, for doing that. And he knew exactly what
Oh,
to do.
okay. I'll have to go over there. Thank you.
That's good.
Because otherwise I would have been there for an hour trying to figure this all out.
Or you could have just driven an hour out here and we're giving you the same good wines too.
Yeah,
So
or
actually-
that.
Yeah, so
Next time
actually,
you come visit me, we'll go over to Irene's store,
Yeah.
Charmaine.
definitely, we're actually in my
Telling you too.
tasting room. So I've been doing some private events back here by appointment. So if the, sometimes it's wine, sometimes it's whiskey, but by appointment, we can definitely do a bunch of different things. But anyway, yeah, Lorraine wanted me to mention the different areas. So the wines that we're tasting, the first one was Chardonnay, so cooler region, although Chardonnay can grow in much warmer regions. But to get that crisp flavor profile that we had, definitely the northern region. And even north of that is Beaujolais, which is every third Thursday in November is when we always have the Beaujolais Nouveau, which is something that traditionally I've always done. It's like the very first harvest, unaged. If you have patience to wait for the next year and get the Beaujolais Villages instead. And then south of that, in the Northern Rhone, it's a little bit more Syrah wines than, and further south is Grenache. Grenache is definitely needs to warm up a little bit more. So as we go further south, you'll find that the grapes get thicker and thicker in skin and they take longer to ripen. So they need to grow further south until you get down to Provence, where the soils make it really, really good for white wines. So it's not just the temperature, in the region, it's also the soils. I mean, all parts of the terroir really play into what you can really grow really well. So I won't give away the rosé stuff that we get to Provence. But hopefully you'll get to visit Avignon and drink lots of CDP while you're there.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. Thank you. And Irene does bring up some good points. Most of the vineyards that we visit are family owned. They're not really large vineyards. So what my wife and I usually do is, they have apps now and you can put on your phone where you just take a picture of the label and then you can see who distributes, if anyone, who distributes it here in the United States. Because then maybe you can make that decision. Am I buying some wine here and putting it in my suitcase, or is there someone who distributes it near me? Does Irene do it or somebody else like that? So that is something that my wife and I have gotten accustomed to, is if we taste a wine that we really like, we try to figure out how do I get it back in the States. So that's a good point that she brought up.
Bring those wine cases that you can zip the bottles in and put them in your suitcase. You need
Yeah.
a bunch of those on this trip.
This is just a quick shot of the ship that sails on this particular itinerary, the Amasello. A very nice ship. She holds about 150 passengers. So these ships they're long, narrow ships. They fit through the lock system. 150 passenger, about 45, 50 crew members. In the background, you can see Avignon, which we do visit. And then just some pretty slides here to show you this is kind of what Irene has been alluding to. So in the northern part on the Saône River, this is typical. This is typical of what you see in these wine river valleys, in the Burgundy region here. Then you actually get on the ship in this town, Chalon-sur-Saône, beautiful little town. You embark here. And we start our 7-night sailing here. In this part of France, you're going to see, they call their castles chateaux, basically. So you see a lot of chateaux here, and these are from medieval times. This is the Chateau de Couche. Lovely visit, lovely countryside. Again, these are not cities. These are not even large towns. These are small towns. If you look them up, maybe the population is 3,000, 2,000, 3,000 people year round. These are just make for lovely hikes, lovely bike tours. The other thing I will mention about the bike tours is that the Saône and the Rhone are not really long rivers nautically. They kind of snake, they meander, and they're not long by miles or by kilometers as would be, say, the Danube or the Rhine rivers in Central Europe. You can actually take the bicycles out and meet us at the next port in most cases, which is kind of a neat thing. We have 2 guides that go with you, so you don't get lost or anything like that. But if you take the bikes out, you can go out for the day or half day, and you still can do the wine tasting. We make sure that the wine tastings are right before you get to the ship so that you don't, we'll come and get the bicycles from you if you've had a few glasses or more. So no worries there. We've thought about everything. But just food for thought. If you want to try the bike riding, they're not long. They're not, on the Danube, it might be a 25 or 30 mile bike ride. Here in this part of France, because the rivers are not that long, more like 8, 10, 12 kilometers at the most. So it's a good idea if you want to try that.
It's fun to do. We had a great time riding our bikes up the Danube. It was so much fun. And then we went to some places that no one else on the ship went. And when we went back, we were able to tell our story about where we went, because when you come back, everybody has a different story because there's so many excursions. So it's kind of fun to hear each other's stories.
And that's another great point. That's another great point.
Never went on a cruise that had a tidal bore. The year that we went, it was that time of year, and in the middle of our cruise, they go, "Get off the ship if you want, or stay on the ship. We need to undock." Because there was, basically it's the change of the tides and the moon. And this little tidal wave came right through the river. It was really cool. You saw people cruising on their little surfboards. That was really fun.
That sounds like fun. And the locks are a lot of fun too. They're
Lots of
fun to
fun.
go through.
Yeah. This is a slide of Mâcon. I think that the first wine we tasted was from Mâcon, which is one of the areas known for Chardonnays. And of course, we have a wine tasting in Mâcon as well. And that's what we do. We take you right into the vineyard. We take you right into the vineyard. Sometimes the tasting's right in the vineyard. Sometimes you go back to the main house and you go into a wine cellar and do the tasting. I've done so many tastings. I've done tastings in castles and wine cellars, old churches, and the vineyards. So it depends who we're working with on that itinerary. But it's all authentic. You're talking to usually, again, these are small wineries. These are family-owned, generational, passed down from one generation to the next. So it's very authentic to talk to somebody who's been in the business for maybe 5 generations, and great grandfather started the business, something like that. It's really interesting stuff. I love this one. This Chateau Cormitin, you can see still has a moat around it. How cool is that? What I really like about this is from the 14th century. And they've actually renovated this. So it's much larger than the photograph shows. So some of these have been restored and they were sold as luxury condos. Okay. That's not what you
Wow.
visit, but that's pretty cool, right? So at some point, entrepreneurs get involved in these things and the government says, listen, if you fix this up, you can have half of it and do what you want with it. The other half, it has to stay for tourism, right? So I love this visit and the fact that, you don't see too many castles and chateaus that still have moats around them. So this is a nice visit. Beaujolais, again, it's all the whole valley, the Saône and the Rhone. It's just everywhere you look, both sides of the ship, it's just vineyards as far as the eye can see. And they're not these big multi-corporation vineyards. This is not Mondavi. These are, small to mid-sized family-owned wineries, just like Irene was saying earlier. And you do have to check because you don't know what you can find in the States, or if you can find in the States. And again, this is what my wife and I, it's something we do. We do it on the ship. We look at the wines on the ship. We take pictures of the labels. When we go into town after the excursions, we usually stay in town, sit down at a cafe, order a bottle of wine, get something local to nosh on, and people watch, right? And some of the best wines that we drink now, my wife and I, are wines that we've had not necessarily on the ship, but off the ship when we were, whether we found a wine at a wine tasting or we went into town, we sat down at a bistro or a cafe. And it's just great to just explore. I mean, that's what you're there for, just to explore. We'll give you the lay of the land with an excursion, with a sightseeing excursion, and then you just go off on your own and explore and figure out what you want to do. So just a great area to be in. Lyon is the midway point. Again, I mentioned this earlier. Lyon is the third largest city in France. It is the culinary capital of France. And basically the most, I forget the rating, it's not Berlitz or one of the guides, I think the most Zagat rated restaurants in the world are in Lyon, because again, you have this wonderful cuisine from the north and this wonderful cuisine from Provence, and it comes together. So you can pick and choose what you want to eat that day. Do you want something heavier and a rich sauce from the north? Or you want something Mediterranean, lighter in an olive oil, something like that from the south? Beautiful city, artistically, architecturally. I love how it's just so neat the way they take all these buildings, even though they're not all the same shapes or sizes or colors, and they just kind of pancake them together. Different stories, different levels, different widths. It's a beautiful city. The people are beautiful. There's so many opportunities to find good food, cheeses, olive oils, desserts. I can go on and on and on. Great wines, great sausage. It's just, I know we feed you well on the ship, but when you're in Lyon, if you don't fall in love with Lyon, you're not a foodie, and you don't drink enough wine, I guess. But Lyon is my favorite stop on this itinerary. And now is Avignon. I know Irene's mentioned Avignon a couple of times. This is a very famous view of Avignon. A lot of famous artists have painted this view, right, in history. This is the broken bridge at Avignon. And this is what you'll find on these older historic rivers. You'll find these bridges that they're 1,000 years old and they just fell into the water and they leave them there because they look great. And in the background is the Papal Palace. Okay, so in the 13th century, the church split, and the Western Church came to Avignon, and they brought a pope with them, and they were here. I want to say about 85 years. I think from about 1310, 1308 to 1390, something like that. I don't know the exact years, but the western part of the Catholic Church was here, and the other part of the church was still in Rome, and they were fighting. They split. And we do visit the Papal Palace, but now we have the wine tasting at Avignon, and this is Irene's cue. This is Irene's third tasting now. Okay.
Wait, I have to go get her really quick. She went to the store.
Okay, it's okay. She's running a business, so.
Can I ask a question while we're
Sure you
waiting?
can.
So this is big for me. I've never been on a river cruise, but I have an issue with motion sickness with regard to,
That's a great question. I'm going to tell you something real quick. My wife suffers from motion sickness extremely, even in car rides. She can't be on a bus. She doesn't do well on ocean cruises. And I tell this story every time I do this pitch. I've been doing this for many years, but I took my wife several years ago. We were on the Danube, and she had Dramamine, and she had the bracelets, and she was all ready. And I kept saying, it's a flat bottom ship. You can't even hear the engines. They're eco-friendly. They're low emission. You can't even hear them. There's no vibration or anything. And she said, please just tell me, Steve, just tell me when the ship starts to sail so I can take a Dramamine or something. I said, Leanne, we've been sailing for half an hour. Fix your eyes to the banks, and you can see we've been moving for 30 minutes. You can't even tell. It's that
Yeah.
quiet. Okay. So
A common conversation at dinner is, are we moving?
yes, you have
We're
to.
moving.
To know for sure if you're moving, you have to fix your gaze to a point on land. And when we move by it, we're moving. And we're not moving fast. We're moving like 12 knots per hour. The ship opened up, the ship goes 25 knots an hour. We're usually going between 12 and 14 knots. Motion sickness is not an issue. I've been with my wife going to Bermuda and other places. Oh boy, not good. She can't get out of bed for a couple of days.
thank you.
Yeah, so you're good there.
Okay,
You're on.
Rosé.
You're on.
sorry about that. I was educating my staff on the wines we've tasted so far. This is Chateau Cormitin en Provence, and same producer, same importer. A very small production. There's only so let me give you the blend first, because it's further south. It's a 40% Grenache, 25% Syrah, 25% Senso, and 5% of a grape I won't even pronounce. But anyway, so the soils in Provence are a lot more limestone, much flintier. Actually, I forgot to mention in Chateau Cormitin, the reason one of the reasons the fruits ripen as well as they do is that they have all these like kind of big mini boulders, I call them, gravel. It's like this size. It looks like a gravel, but the stones are really big. And so what that does is it reflects back and it heats up the grapes. And it's funny because when I was in Paris, we went to a wine museum that showed us, all the different terroir and this like little mini boulders. But anyway, back to the rosé, one of my favorites since I went to Bordeaux.
It's amazing.
It's really amazing. So the reason I chose this rosé over any other rosé I could have chosen, I have a really high-end from Whispering Angel and all that good stuff. So the grapes from this particular vineyard are first pressed in this bottle. So if you can ever find it east of the river, I think I'm the only one that carries it other than what's on the shore. Somewhere in West Hartford and Greenwich, a couple of stores that have it. If you go on the website, you'll be able to find that. I think there's maybe 1 or 2 stores in West Hartford that carry it. Probably one of the most amazing rosés I've ever had. Almost as good as what I had in France, if I can remember. And the reason it is it's the first press of the grapes is what they put into that bottle. The fourth press, so they press the grapes and they pass it on and, we'll do that thing with it. The fourth press is what goes into Whispering Angel and Merval. So that's how special this rosé is. And for the price, Whispering Angel, yep. So this is first press, yours is fourth press. Price on this, I can't remember, I never talked prices, $27.99. But you'll have to taste this because it is just out of the, when I first tasted it, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm in France tasting this rosé. Very small, production also 5,000 cases. It's also aged on the lees for 2 months, which means that they let it ferment. So it gives it a much better mouthfeel. Because sometimes rosé, people, I don't like rosés. That's what I used to say. One, people think it's not your grandmother's rosé. It's not sweet. 2, some of the rosés are just a little bit, the palate is just not right right? It kind of bites you a little bit. But this, because they've aged it on leash for at least 2 months, gives you that really nice, smooth mouthfeel. But the fruit, I mean, the strawberries and it's just out of this world. Another one that can bury my nose in. Yeah, it's just like, it's a big bowl of whatever this is. So, anyone got this rosé and having the same reaction as I am to it?
Is that the Whispering Angel?
Yeah, that's,
The Whispering Angel is pretty good, but what I said was it's the 4th press of the grapes that went into here. So
Yeah,
it's kind
I
of,
know. Yeah.
but
I
you know,
think
it's
the
I mean,
Whispering
Whispering Angel is something that is very good. The high-end bottle of the Whispering Angel, I think it's starts with a G. I just ordered it for a customer. It's like $100 bottle. I would love to open one of these fresh, open that bottle fresh, taste it blind, which is what I love to do. Maybe that'll be one of my wine tastings, a blind rosé tasting, to really kind of see if you can actually tell the difference between the two. Because to me, a lot of people buy, whether it's wine, whiskey, spirits, they always buy by label. I always say, look, when I let somebody taste something, I always say, taste it blind, taste it based on the flavor, buy it based on the flavor, not on price. But if you can't afford it, at least you have a chance to taste it, you know, to experience how good something can be without looking at the label, because you'll find you're way more critical of whatever it is you're tasting when you're not looking at a label. So, but anyway, cheers.
Good job.
Anybody else have a rosé you want to ask about? Or did you guys get Whispering Angel? A lot of people probably know.
Whispering Angel, Rock Angel, same company. Merval is one of the more inexpensive ones, but if you're going to the beach,
That one's a great.
what's that?
Irene, I had a couple of questions. We
Sure.
went to, excuse me, we went to your store this morning. A couple of hours are a different year. Does that affect the taste maybe?
Sometimes, yes. I mean, unless you're drinking them side by side, or unless it's a really bad year, most of it should be similar. So you can't really tell the difference unless you're tasting them side by side. So let's say you have a 2017 and a 2018.
Mm-hmm.
If you're tasting them side by side, you might be able to pick up differences between the two. If you're tasting the wines at the right temperature, right? So the wines that people serve, I swear they're not always at the right temperature. When I'm trying to do a tasting here, I actually have one of those instant thermometer things, because that's how anal I am about serving the wine at the right temperature. Because it really
Listen, I'm the
takes-
one who wraps a paper bag around a bottle of wine. So you're
All right. I like that. It really does make a difference, especially for whites that you have to, and even reds that you have to chill, right? Because those sometimes I'm in a hurry, but like throw in the freezer for a little while and you take it out. But when it's not the right temperature, if it's too cold, you don't get all the aromas. When it's too warm, it just tastes kind of flabby. And you're like, I don't like this wine, but you know, and the reason I know this is I do it with my staff all the time, trying to educate them on wines. It's like, I don't like that one. It's kind of flabby. I'm like, all right, let's put your glass in the freezer for 10, 15 minutes, and let's take it back out and try it. And then they go, oh, it's much better. There's more fruit coming through. There's more
Right.
coming through, and that's so important. I guess most people don't care that much about their wines to be like the right temperature and everything. Even red wines, right? When they say room temperature, it's not our room temperature. It's not 75 degrees. It's definitely below 60, about 60 to 62 maybe, like a Chateau Cormitin, probably in the low 60s.
Now we were told, I believe it was on the wine tour that we went with Lorraine's group with Emerald, that you put the reds into the refrigerator or the whites into the refrigerator, and you pull them out, and then you put the red in just for a little bit, just to kind of bring it down. But neither one they're not cold, they're not warm.
Yes, yep, definitely. And a trick, because you guys tuned in today. If you're one of those people, if you live alone or there's only two of you and you don't drink enough wine, a really nice way to save the wine for the next day and the next day after, especially with reds, and I've actually experimented with whites also. You get these glass bottles, 4 ounces, So if you're only gonna drink 4 ounces a night, you have another 16 ounces to save.
That
Right?
much
So buy,
evaporated at night.
yeah, buy those glass bottles. As soon as you open the wine, don't get any more air in it. Pour into those bottles. Put it in your fridge. Put it in your refrigerator. In your vegetable drawer. And the next day, when you're getting ready to drink it, take it out, let it warm up the temperature, and you'll find that both whites and reds, unless you let it go for 2 or 3 weeks, I've let it go probably almost 10 days. And it tastes as good, and the aromas are still there. So that's how you save your wine. It's not pretty pouring out a little bottle, but the flavor is amazing.
Irene, the other thing I wanted to tell you is we went to a bourbon tasting at the Danielson Elks 2 weeks ago, and I guess you had an awful lot to do with all of the different bourbons that
Yes, I
were
did.
that were brought in that night, and we really, really enjoyed it.
You gotta come see me then.
Yes.
On the
come and
weekend.
see Irene. Just text her and she'll make you an appointment.
Yes, definitely on the
You
weekend.
gotta do it. It's the best experience ever.
Irene, I'm gonna tell you, we went over to Western Massachusetts, up into the Berkshires for a couple of days.
Yep.
And my brother-in-law talked about you almost all the time we were up there. Yeah.
We were all at the bourbon tasting, and it was just a lot of fun. And they kept referring to you the whole time. So you are famous in Northeast Connecticut, my dear.
It was
I just want to be rich, not famous.
Oh, the pear liqueur.
There was a pear liqueur that they had a mixed drink up there that
At
had
the Red Lion Inn
at the Red Lion Inn that had pear liqueur in it.
with one of the bourbons.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, Chris Dillon, I think he did the presentation.
Yes, he did. And Chris did a great job. He and Dennis Alemian did a wonderful, wonderful job.
Yeah.
Excellent. Great. I'm glad
Yeah,
to hear
so
that.
you were very, very much talked about that evening.
She's famous over here.
And we will go to see you.
Thank you. Cheers, guys.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Marty.
anyway, we don't mean to hog the stage.
That's all right. Thank you very
good.
much.
It's all good. Good
Go for it,
information from
Stephen.
Irene. Good information. After Avignon, we reached the town of Arles. Arles is known for a couple of different things. You can see a couple in this photograph here. You can see a couple of Romanesque
Even if I just falling up.
Colosseum.
He called it the Coliseum.
And the Colosseum here, the big one here in the center was restored, and they started using it in the 1930s for bullfights. And today it's still being used. And once or twice a year, and I've looked this up, they still have bullfights there, not very often, but more commonly they have concerts and plays and other things you would think of for, I think today it holds about 10,000. I think originally it was built for about 20,000. But it's still, you can go online and look up that Coliseum and order tickets for shows, which I think is kind of neat. And there's another half amphitheater there to sort of to the left, open. It looks like it's not in, maybe it's under reconstruction, something like that. But Arles is a very famous town. The other reason it's famous is that our friend, Mr. Vincent van Gogh, lived here
Pretty.
for a couple of years. So we go through the old part of Arles. We'll find where he lived for a while. We actually visit the house that he lived in for a while. And then on later that day, if you wish, you can go to what used to be the asylum where he was for a couple of years when he had his breakdown. It's currently a working monastery, and I think they still use it as a part of it's still a hospital. It's beautifully kept. It's beautiful botanical gardens there and everything like that. So if you're a fan of Van Gogh's, a lot of interest there, and he actually was very active when he was there for almost 2 years, 2 consecutive years. He was sort of run out of town by the locals. He wasn't that popular with the locals after he cut off his ear, and they sort of had him committed. But he did produce about 150 works while he was at the asylum at Saint-Remy. And so there's a lot of interesting stuff there with regard to Van Gogh, and it is a beautiful town and a beautiful area. Also, this is different time of year, but this is the area, Avignon to Arles, just east of there is where you'd find the lavender fields. They would be in bloom, say in June, usually June and July, they're in bloom. So this is a beautiful part of France. The countryside is just filled with wildflowers. There's all kinds of tours that we offer these days and going in often all different directions, like Lorraine said earlier. And it is really a neat thing, Lorraine, when you come back on the ship and everyone's done something different, as opposed to other cruise lines where everybody does the same tour. There's a standard tour. Everybody does the tour. You're going in groups of 50. You get back on the ship and we're talking about the same thing, basically. So that's not the case with AMA here. There's so many different directions and things you could be doing each day. And that's the itinerary. That's the 7-night itinerary. Now, just a couple of, I'll share with you the solo traveler program. People that travel on their own always are concerned about cruises because cruises tend to be, Lorraine, would you say unfriendly to solo travelers? I mean, usually you're paying for the price of the stateroom. You're not paying, you're paying for the person that's not there, right?
You're paying double, basically,
Right.
in most cases. Maybe double minus
It may be
5% or
90%
something.
more,
but-
yeah, sometimes 70, 80, 90%. But we do have a solo traveler program that says on all the categories except the AA's and the suites, we'll give you a break on that, and it's 25% more. So that's something you would
Okay.
work out with Lorraine, which is a very fair thing. I think I've been in this industry for 36, 37 years, and that's a pretty generous policy that we have regarding solo travelers. And the other thing we do for solo travelers, which I think is so simple, it doesn't cost us anything, but it's so nice, is anyone traveling on their own, when they get on the ship, they have a welcome cocktail in the library with the cruise director and other solo travelers. So you'll meet another, I'd say about 10% of our guests are traveling alone, right? And when I travel alone on business, I usually attend this. I mean, for me, it's good just to see how do we handle the solo travelers and what's the experience. It's a very nice thing to do the first night and say, okay, here's the other 12 people on the ship who are traveling alone, and now you have 11 new friends, and let's have a drink together and let's talk about what's going to happen this week. And I just think it's such a nice gesture that doesn't cost us anything. And I've worked at other companies and they don't do something like that. So I like to talk about that. I think it's kind of a neat thing.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about, go ahead.
We have a lot of solo travelers that follow me, so it's great because we can offer you guys a solo
Sounds good.
opportunity. Yeah. And then we also match same gender roommates. So if you are okay with having a roommate, then we can even get your price a little lower because we can match you with the same gender roommate. So just keep that in mind, but we're good at it. We do a lot of solo traveler trips.
Right. And Lorraine, that's what's good about these. So maybe you had a drink, maybe you had a glass of wine with somebody that you might be traveling with in a couple of years, right? On one of
Yeah,
these.
that's
events,
right.
So we can do more of these Zoom events. You can meet more solo travelers. I don't know, but that is a
And
good.
I myself is a solo traveler because my husband will go on maybe 2 trips a year where I'll go on 10 trips a year because for me, there's never enough trips. So, but it doesn't mean you have to be a single. It could just mean that you're traveling solo because your husband doesn't want to go on as many trips.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I have the opportunity, I'll bring my wife, I'll bring my kids, but I don't always have the opportunity. I am usually traveling as a solo myself. And, so I just think it's a good break on price, and it's a good way to meet other people as well. So,
And we need you because we hardly ever have solo men. We always have an overrun of solo women.
Okay.
Men don't like to travel as much as women do. I don't get
No,
that.
that is in the
That's
industry.
typical.
The trick in the industry is always, and I own, Lorraine, I own my own travel agency for many years before I came over to AMA. But the trick was always sell to the woman in the couple, because that's who's making the decision on where they're going and where they're staying, and so on and so forth. So that was sort of the insider tip in the trade, is to sell to the woman. But
That's why I just met Rick. I just met Jack. I know their wives really well. Right, ladies? We're good. We figure out where
But
you guys are gonna go.
We,
Don't
but
worry.
we want the gents to know that when they come along, they will have a blast because there's something for everyone. The other thing that we don't talk about a lot, I mean, this is a wine cruise, but even the photos of you from your other cruise, you're in Germany on the other cruise or Austria, and you're drinking some hearty beers, I noticed, Lorraine. So it's not just wine. And if people are more interested in beer, there's plenty of beer. Beer is also included in the trip as well. So I want to bring that up too. So, and then we don't want to get into the weeds here and talk about money or anything like that, but we do want you to understand that Lorraine has very thoughtfully, and not through me, she went directly to my company and negotiated like I had to ask her to send me the contract because I didn't believe what you said. Remember you said the other day, we were like, is it $12.50 off per couple or per
Per
person?
cabin or per person?
Yeah. So
It's per person.
per person. So
On Alma Waterways does not need to strike deals. They're that good. I mean, very rarely do they
I had to look at the
offer-
contract before we put it on the slide. I'm like, let's make sure this is accurate.
2,500.
I mean, this is a cruise line. A lot of cruise lines offer a lot of promotions and a lot of deals. Alma Waterways doesn't need to. They sell out their ships. They sold out their 2021 ships so fast with this whole COVID thing. They had to move to 2022. They were the first cruise line to push their 2022 sailings out into the public so that we could sell them because we were all running out of inventory. And now they're talking about already doing the 2023 because they are such a great line that they don't really need to do a lot of promotion. So when they offered me this promotion, I couldn't believe it. So just remember though, it's only good until December. So that's why we're doing this wine tasting thing so soon, because you just have to put down $400 and that will hold your cabin all the way until 90 days before we sail. So you don't have to put any more money down. Just put that down and then you'll get $12.50 off per person, which is a phenomenal rate for Alma Waterways. So call me and I'll help you understand what each cabin is